guys, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to The Wandering Reader. Today I'm going to be talking about my top 5 favourite books of autumn this year. So the 5 books that I really enjoyed reading over the course of September, October and November 2019. So all of the books that I'm going to be talking about I actually read on my Kindle, which is a difference for a change. And I actually have 2 Kennedy Ryan to talk about on this list. So I discovered Kennedy Ryan this autumn and absolutely fell in love with her books. So yeah, when it came around to putting together this list, I had to put the 2 books on there, and I'm really looking forward to reading more stuff by her basically. So the first book that I'm going to talk about is Flow by Kennedy Ryan, and this is the prequel. It's book 0.5 in the Grip series that she has written, and I think there are 2 or 3 other books in that series. And this prequel follows Marlon and Bristol, and Bristol is flying over to see her twin brother in LA, I think. And she hasn't seen her twin brother in quite a few years. He was sort of an up-and-coming music star, and you know, he decided that his parents were putting too much pressure on him, and that he wanted to move to LA to live with his uncle to sort of get away from the pressure and get his life back on track and things like that. So she hasn't seen him for quite a number of years. So she's flying over to LA to see him, to sort of reunite with him for the first time in a while. And she meets Marlon at the airport, and Marlon is somebody who works with her brother sort of in the music studio that they work on. Marlon is an up-and-coming music star, and her brother has sent Marlon to the airport to sort of pick Bristol up. The 2 of them meet at the airport, and it's obviously about the 2 of them and their relationship and sort of going on from there, and sort of how she reconnects with her brother and things like that. The reason why I liked this book so much is just because I was immediately drawn into Kennedy Ryan's writing. I really felt like I connected with it. The dialogue between Marlon and Bristol was just incredible. They talked about so many really important topics, and Kennedy Ryan didn't shy away from those awkward conversations where, although they didn't feel awkward between Marlon and Bristol, but you know, those things that you maybe feel a little bit shy about talking about with somebody that you don't know that well to begin with, so sort of political issues, social issues, that sort of idea. She didn't shy away from writing about those things, or shy away from how to construct dialogue where, you know, the conversation wasn't almost smooth sailing, and you know, they could disagree with each other at the same time as not having an argument over it, and that sort of idea. And I really liked it for that reason. The relationship between Marlon and Bristol was so well written, and you were really rooting for them. And then there was this massive cliffhanger at the end of the book, because obviously this is the prequel to the series. So I'm really looking forward to picking the first book up in the series, which I can't remember what the name is of now. But yeah, just loving Kennedy Ryan's writing, and this is definitely one of my favourites of this autumn. So I lied, there's actually a physical book on this list, and it is 10 Tiny Breaths by K.A. Tucker. This is a book that I recently talked about on my November wrap up, and it is, I would class it as like maybe a YA, but maybe a new adult contemporary book, and it follows a girl called Casey who was involved in a car accident a few years ago which killed both of her parents, her best friend and her boyfriend. And she's been dealing with the fallout of that for a few years, whilst also looking after her little sister. They've been living with her aunt and uncle, and they decide to run away from their aunt and uncle when the uncle makes kind of like a sexual pass at the younger sister, and which is obviously really sinister and creepy, and they decide, right, they've had enough, they're going to go. And they get the bus to LA, I think, again, talk about 2 books that are set in LA, and sort of start again sort of thing. So they rent this apartment, and they and Casey bumps into this boy called Trent, who also lives in one of the apartments, and there's this tension between them immediately, but because Casey is dealing with all of this stuff, she doesn't want to get into it, that kind of idea. There's a really lovely next door neighbour whose name I can't remember at the moment. She's got a little girl and she works at this sort of like strip club, and she gets Casey a job there. And I really enjoyed reading the scenes at this particular bar that they worked in, but also I just enjoyed reading from Casey's perspective, and K.A. Tucker had a really good way of writing about grief and about the fallout of you know, going through something so traumatic like that. But also you've got this sort of like almost like a coming together type story in terms of, you know, she's trying to fix herself and that sort of idea. And I really enjoyed this. This gripped me from the beginning, and I'm really looking forward to reading other books in this series and other books by K.A. Tucker. Next up I want to talk about Bittersweet by Sarina Bowen. This is the first book in the True North series, and this follows Griffin and Audrey. And Griffin runs his family farm in Vermont. They, you know, have dairy cows, they grow apples for cider and various other things. And he had to take over the farm when his father died a couple of years ago. And Audrey has been tasked from the restaurant that she works for, the restaurant chain that she works for, to sort of drive to Vermont and see if she can get some of the farmers to sell her some of their produce, so that this restaurant chain can have them. And Griffin happens to be one of the farms on the list, and it's the first farm that she drives to. And she quickly realises that she knows Griffin. They slept together a couple of times in college, and it was sort of like a rebound type thing. And it's about them meeting and the relationship between the two of them. And what I particularly liked about this one is the Vermont setting and the farm setting and all of the references to cooking and, you know, produce and things like that. I really liked that element to it. Plus the relationship between Griffin and Audrey was, again, really well written. I totally believed in their relationship. And then they had this, Griffin had this wonderful family dynamic, so I really enjoyed reading about all of the different elements of the family and what was going on in the farm and things like that. This was just truly delightful, and another favourite for autumn. At number 4 on my list of favourites is Leave Me Breathless by Jodi Malpas, and this tells the story of Ryan and Hannah. Ryan is sort of like an ex-security agent, or he decides to be an ex-security agent at the beginning of the book, and he you know, drives back to this cabin in the woods that he lives in to, you know, spend time with his daughter and things like that. Hannah has just moved into the village that his cabin is located in the middle of the English countryside somewhere, and they meet when he accidentally runs her over off of her bicycle. She's delivering something to someone, and yeah, he accidentally runs her over. And it's about the relationship between the two of them. What I particularly liked about this one is that it was set in the UK, so you had all of like the UK countryside and things like that. And a lot of romance novels that I read tend to be set in the US. It's, you know, pretty standard stuff. But Jodi Malpas is a British author. So I particularly like that aspect of it, and then the sort of romantic suspense element to it. So Hannah has a past that you don't learn a lot about until you get into the book, and you know that there is this really sort of a suspenseful element to the book, which I really enjoyed reading about as well. Ryan's daughter is just so sassy and hilarious, and the relationship between those two was just wonderful to read about, basically. Yeah, and I found this really good. I've never read a Jodi Malpas book before, and I really want to read more of her back catalogue now because this was great. And then the last book that I want to talk about on this list is Long Shot by Kennedy Ryan. This is the first book in the Hoops series, and it follows Iris and August. And at the beginning of the book they meet in a bar. Iris is watching a basketball game and August is in the bar just having a drink before a big NBA game that he has the next morning. He spots Audrey across, not Audrey, he spots Iris across the room watching this game, and they strike up a conversation, and you know, he really feels like they have this great conversation, and by the end of the evening, you know, he wants to take things further, and she tells him that she has a boyfriend. You know, he's really disappointed by that and whatever. And they meet a couple more times. The second time, I think the third time that they meet, she's actually had a baby with her boyfriend, and so that cements for him even more that, you know, even though he really likes her, she belongs to somebody else, and so obviously he has to keep his distance. Meanwhile, Iris is caught up in an abusive relationship with her boyfriend. And although I've read books about abusive relationships before, they're always shocking, obviously, and this one was particularly shocking. So I said in my wrap up that I know that Kennedy Ryan did an awful lot of research into domestic abuse, abusive relationships, you know, women who have been abused by their partners, husbands, boyfriends, whatever, and she interviewed a lot of women, and some of those women were then her sort of early readers for the book as well. So I knew that going in, and so therefore when I was reading the parts of the book where, you know, you were getting details about what was going on in this relationship, it was even more shocking because I knew it was based on real sort of stuff, and then therefore you're kind of like, well, Iris represents some of these women that Kennedy Ryan spoke to, and therefore your sympathy and empathy levels just, yeah, it was just really shocking to read about. But then you're also in the background, Iris and August, the more every time they meet, the closer that they become. And it's about their relationship, but also Iris breaking free of this abusive relationship. And it was just utterly incredible. It's probably going to be one of my favourite books of the year. I can't see it not making my list. It was just absolutely fantastic. Really, really good, and you just need to read it. So there you go, guys. They were my top 5 books of autumn 2019. I'd love to have a chat with you in the comments below. What have been some of your favourite books that you've read over the last few months? I'd love some recommendations. And have you read any Kennedy Ryan? Are you as sort of into her writing as I seem to be at the moment? She's astounded me so far with what she's written, and I can't wait to dive into her other books. I've got a couple of her books on my Kindle lined up ready to read maybe in the new year, so looking forward to that. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.